Hello and welcome to Frost Over the World. On today's programme, Bend It Like Beckham movie director Gurinder Chadha, a debate about Sudan's controversial presidential election, and senior British politician David Steel on last night's foreign affairs debate. But first, the United States. After President Obama's narrow victory with his health care bill last month, it was widely assumed that his Democratic Party would breathe a huge sigh of relief and begin surging up the opinion polls again. Well, so far, that hasn't actually happened yet. And with midterm elections approaching, time is, of course, running out now to change the situation. The former chairman of the party and a contender for that party's presidential candidacy back in 2004 is Howard Dean, who joins me now from New York. Howard, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me on.
It's a joy to have you with us. When the health care bill was passed, it was widely assumed that the president's polling ratings and everything would soon rocket up again with this breakthrough and so on. And that hasn't happened as quickly as some people predicted. Why is that, do you think?
I think the principal problem is the economy. People are very worried about their jobs. The economy is turning around, but of course the lagging indicator in any recovery is unemployment. And that's going to be some time before that begins to turn around. I think the president will recover. I think the Democrats will narrowly hold on to their majorities in both houses, but we've got some improvement in the economy to go yet.
And how long will that take, do you think, realistically? If you were writing out a speech for tomorrow, what would you feel would be safe to predict?
Well, I think it's safe to predict that we are on the way back. But this financial reform bill that's going through the Congress now is very, very important. The Republicans, I think, have made a terrible mistake by, again, being the party of no. That is not something that's going to get them many favors, win them any favors, standing up for the insurance companies and the banking industry as their clients in the election. And they're really struggling now as to how they can get this thing passed and back themselves off the ledge. So I do think we're heading in the right direction as far as the Democrats go, and I frankly think the country's heading in the right direction.
And the situation after 4 years, when you were the chairman of the Democratic National Committee and so on, as that next election approaches, is it a nervous time for both parties, or understandably, do you say, not a nervous time for the Democrats?
Well, I think it's always hard to govern, harder to govern than it is to be in the opposition. We are governing now. There have been some early mistakes. I think the length of time it took to get the health care bill through, the fact that it wasn't quite as much change as a lot of people had hoped for, those are all setbacks. But we have a new administration. Our position in the world is much better than it was under the previous administration. Frankly, our economy is on the way up instead of on the way down, and I think those things are all going to help us as we approach the midterms.
And what about in terms of foreign policy, Howard, at this particular point? In terms of Hamid Karzai and in terms of Benjamin Netanyahu, we have two provocative statements around the world, that in fact seem to be, at the moment, scoring over the administration in Washington. Do you trust those two men to lead in the right way?
I don't think it. I think we have to deal with what we have, and certainly there's been some disappointment with both those leaders, but we need a peace in the Middle East. That's now a matter of American security, national security, not just simply a matter of doing the right thing. In Afghanistan, it's a very serious problem. We appreciate the British help there and the other help from the other countries, but the fact is terrorists will make their home back in Afghanistan if we aren't able to defeat the Taliban there, and that's a serious problem. So certainly there's been some disappointments, but we're going to have to soldier through with this until we can stabilize the situation.
Until that point comes. Do you think Hillary Clinton has had an inspired spell, really, as Secretary of State?
I think she's been terrific. I think she was a very good choice of Secretary of State. I think she, because of her own personal characteristics and her own stellar career, carries the message of the United States very, very well, and I think she's so far been very, very successful.
And in terms, as we look at policy and in Britain and so on at the moment, we have at the moment, this general election going on in Britain. Someone you know very well is leading for the Liberal Democrats, and a good friend of yours and a colleague as well. How are you responding to that election campaign after the first 2 rounds?
Well, I'm very encouraged. As you know, I've done been of some minor help to the Liberal Democrats. I don't take money for it. I'm not a consultant on the other side of the Atlantic, but I love change politics, and Nick is really bringing change to British politics. It's badly needed. I think he's going to win. I think it's going to be very difficult because of the first past the post system, but I think he is most likely, the most likely outcome of this election is for Nick Clegg to be the Prime Minister in a coalition government. And
you really think that's a serious possibility? That's very exciting thing for British people to examine at the moment. It would be a real, as you said, breakthrough.
David, it's very interesting. I've been over twice in the last year to do a little bit of work, both on the internet in terms of getting out people, in terms of identifying voters, in terms of talking about the platform I addressed their midwinter convention in 2009. This is a young group of people who really want change, and I think the British people, after what they've just gone through, really badly want some change, the financial implosions and so forth. Huge problems in Britain. I think the British people desperately want a fresh voice, and they've got one in Nick Clegg. As soon as I realized that there were going to be debates held, I thought that Nick could win. Because I knew the Tories and the Labour people were going to attack each other. I knew that people were sick of the same old politics. Nick not only did well the first debate, which put him on the map, but he withstood the fire in the second debate, which showed that he could be Prime Minister. We'll see what the third one brings. I'm very encouraged. I'm encouraged for the Transatlantic Alliance. I think Nick is an awfully bright guy who totally gets the new politics in the world. A new generation politician. We desperately need that kind of leadership.
And you really think, having seen that second debate last night and so on, that the situation, the bubble is not about to burst?
David, I don't think it's a bubble. I told them that this was what they could expect in the second debate. Since they surprised everybody, they won't get a chance to do that again. They threw everything they had. The right-wing press is making up all sorts of stuff, as the right-wing press tends to do with in the British tabloids, and he stood up against it. He, by most accounts, won. It was close this time. Won the debate from the people who watched. My guess is the audience was much bigger this time, and it'll be much bigger a week from yesterday. So I think it's terrific. I'm thrilled. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for Britain to mobilize its young people and to bring itself into the next century.
So you're really seeing, yes, this is really a situation where there's almost a closer chemistry than ever before, if this came together in the way that you see it happening.
I do. I mean, you know, I think the transatlantic alliance between Britain and the United States is unbreakable, but it's going to have to go through evolution. The time is past that Britain is going to be the junior partner in this alliance, and Nick is not going to allow that to happen. This is going to be a relationship of equals under Prime Minister Clegg, and I think that's a good thing for Britain, and it's a good thing for the United States.
Well, that's a very interesting, very, very clear point, and making that clearly, the situation is not just that the bubble is not going to burst, but the expansion, you say, is going to continue and could continue to take Mr. Clegg all the way to number 10.
Well, that'll be up to the British people, but I think that they've pretty much indicated that they've found something they really like in Nick Clegg, and I think he'd serve the people of Britain well. That, of course, is going to be their final choice.
Howard, thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. Howard Dean, huge thanks to him. More on the UK elections and last night's crucial debate on foreign policy after this short break, but there's much more besides.